Good morning, and thank you for joining us for today's webinar, the top 3 best practices to drive manufacturing efficiency in 2013. I'm Dee Bowers, and before I turn it over to the presenters, I'm just going to briefly go over how to use the webinar pane. So on the right side of your monitor, you should see an orange arrow. If you click that arrow, you'll be able to toggle the webinar pane between the open and closed position. You should also see a small chat window. Feel free to enter your questions in throughout the presentation, and we'll answer those during our Q&A session. Now is also a good time to double-check audio settings. So if you're calling in on your telephone, please make sure you've selected the Use Telephone option. Or if you're on your computer, make sure you've selected the Use Mic and Speakers. Finally, this webinar is being recorded, and we'll be sending out a link to the recording and slide deck within 48 hours. So with that, I'm going to turn the presentation over to Gil Garcia from Microsoft.
Thanks, Dee. Just want to mention that we do have some time at the end of the webinar for question and answer. So there are a variety of ways to ask the questions. But we will reserve some time for Q&A at the end. My name is Gil Garcia. I'm the Director of U.S. Dynamics for Manufacturing Industries. And when Microsoft talks about manufacturing for ERP or CRM, we're talking about industrial equipment, automotive, chemicals, high-tech, life sciences, primary metals, oil and gas, and aerospace and defense. Even though this webinar is being hosted by the manufacturing group, just wanted to make you aware Microsoft's industries cover a more diverse group, including retail, service industries, including architecture, engineering, and construction, the distribution sector, public sector, healthcare, financial services, and consumer packaged goods. Today, I'm going to talk a little bit about our partner, Armanino. Armanino is one of our top manufacturing partners in the country. And we're also using this opportunity to talk about one of our key ISVs, our partner add-on from Lexmark, which really focuses on AP automation. We're going to spend a little time talking about Armanino, the CFO Evolution in Manufacturing Industry. We'll talk about a survey that they recently did. Focus in on some of the results of that survey, which really deal with some standardization of processes. Then we're going to turn over the webinar to Lexmark and talk about how one of those processes, AP automation, can help your business. And then, as I mentioned earlier, we'll save some time at the end for some summary and conclusions and give you a way to contact either myself, the industry team from Microsoft, Armanino, or Lexmark. With that said, I'll turn it over to my colleague from Armanino, Tom. Take it over.
Well, thank you very much, Gil. Good morning, everybody. This is Tom Mescal. I am the partner in charge of consulting for Armanino. We are a CPA and consulting firm, and I have the distinct pleasure of running our consulting business, really focused in 3 major areas: our Microsoft Dynamics practice, our CFO advisory services, and our cloud consulting makes up our 3 major consulting areas that we work with companies. I personally have over 25 years experience advising CFO organizations. I have been involved in many projects around business process improvement, organizational change management, IT infrastructure, ERP and business strategy and planning. Been a featured speaker and author on a number of occasions. And obviously, in addition to having a background in consulting, I have a background in management, public accounting, as well as software development. So I have a great excitement to be here this morning and walk everybody through some of the results that we have garnered through our CFO benchmarking survey. This is an annual survey for the firm that we do. I lead this up for us and really try to focus on a few things through our survey. So we try to determine through our survey a real focus around CFOs, what is on their minds, what's in their hearts, and what are they trying to accomplish. So we determine the CFO's priorities, plans, and initiatives. In effect, have a finger on the pulse of what's happening within the marketplace. And then we want to share that knowledge with other CFOs and other organizations so that they can benefit from the same information. The results of our 2015 survey focused on trends and tactics that CFOs found most important to around getting their companies to the next level and how to enhance the value of the CFO organization in the process. The results of our survey are pretty wide-reaching. There was a number of key business objectives that our survey highlights: growing the business, mergers and acquisitions, IPO, reporting and analytics, mobility, project management, and regulatory and compliance. Today, however, we're really just going to cover 3 of those major areas. The first being growing the business, the next being reporting and analytics, and then the third are the trends around mobility. So let's take a little bit of a peek on who has participated in our survey and who's actually given us feedback. So 92% of our participants are part of the CFO organization, and 65% of all participants are CFOs. So it really demonstrates that we are getting a true voice from the CFO organization. Once again, we had terrific participation from multiple industries. The largest industry sectors that we had, and you can see it here, is the technology and the manufacturing sector. Before we jump into our survey, we have to have a framework that really gives context to the questions that we're going to ask, how we're going to drive results from it. And we have had this framework for a number of years at our organization. In fact, we consult on this framework with many of our clients. It's what we call the CFO Evolution. And it really provides an initiative or a roadmap for CFOs to move their organization forward. The framework is simple in nature. It's broken into 3 categories. The first is the accountant role of the CFO organization. The second is the protector role. And the third is the business leader role. And if you look at a lot of the survey results, CFOs really want to spend more time in the leadership role, but are stuck in the accountant role. Currently, CFOs and their organizations and the dollars they spend are 55% is spent in the accountant role. They spend only 30%. They would like to spend only 30% in that role. Currently, CFOs spend about 25% of their time and organization in the business leadership role, and they'd like to transition that to spend 50% of their time in the business leadership role. So CFOs must streamline the accounting role to become more fast and accurate. They must optimize their protector role to manage for no surprises. So keeping companies out of the headlines of newspaper for the wrong reasons, making sure that organization is hitting on the predictable nature of the business, whether it's budget to actual or whether it's abiding by all the compliance and rules and regulations they have that all relate to the protector role. And with this, enable forward-thinking strategic business leadership for the third and final role, being a business leader and being more forward in thinking. So to accomplish this transformation, there's a few key things that go into it. Obviously, business process is key to accomplishing the transition. Technology is the other key. And then finally, the last leg is the people. And so really, the people and process and the technology can help an organization move from where they are today to where they want to get to in the future. So with that framework, we really have focused our survey around key questions that will help an organization gain insights and hopefully gain insights for the audience today. The first area was around growing the business. What is key to organizations per our survey on growing their businesses for the future? And you can see up here that some of the key growth initiatives are highlighted. So top 3 priorities for the finance organization, one being around business planning and reporting, having a better process around that. 2 is around just structuring, being able to really understand all the different legal entities, especially companies that have international growth plans, how they can offshore intellectual property, set up other structures around the world. And then the last was integrating their technology solutions. And in fact, on that last point, 73% of our survey respondents said standardization of processes is absolutely critical to growing their overall business. And if you look across what are some of those key operational efficiencies, and really kind of allowing the accountant to streamline the organization, the first was the order to cash business process. And if you look at it's a recent Gartner survey, $1 trillion is locked in working capital in U.S. companies, representing working capital that could be available if they had better cash management processes. So for most companies, the order to cash cycle represents the biggest asset on the balance sheet. It's clearly a critical business focus for any CFO. The integration of the front and the back office systems can drastically help improve the performance. This actually ties directly into the procure to pay area, where best-in-class organizations can really capitalize on early payment discounts as opposed to laggards in the industry. Another major operational efficiency here, and later in this webinar you're going to hear a little bit more on the whole procure to pay area with our other guest speaker from Lexmark. They'll be talking about that. Another key area of operational efficiency was the closing process. And for many companies, measuring the time to spend, steps taken, manual adjustments made, errors detected is a great way of identifying how efficient your finance organization is at operating. Certainly when businesses are in the startup mode, having a lot of manual processes is the norm. However, when businesses start to scale, it no longer can scale. And so, companies are really looking for integrated systems across all the company's functions, such as HR, procurement, expense management. Once the company reaches, a certain level of complexity and growth, the financial organization really needs to be on top of their game to supplying a lot of automation. And a big part of it is integrating various systems. So lack of integration will cause errors while also significantly slowing down the closing process. So ultimately, the company is left with financial statements that aren't reliable and not timely. So this is an area where companies are really trying to focus on improving efficiencies, getting rid of the bottlenecks. For manufacturers in particular, and especially those working in regulated industries, corrective and preventative actions are a key business process that is pervasive to all aspects of procurement, manufacturing, handling, and distributions of goods. And having an integrated CAPA process that resides with the business application and consists of a workflow to assign parallel and dependent tasks is critical to reducing the time to close a CAPA case and ensuring prompt resolution for improved performance and compliance. So as you can see from this chart, there's just some key operational efficiencies that companies are focused on. And maybe a little bit at a broader scale, companies that are focused on a solid integration between ERP, CRM, inventory management solutions, allow the company to ensure that they have consistent and accurate data flowing between all systems, seamlessly bridging the gap and breaking down those data silos. And the time saved, times once spent on manual processes, can now be used to continue helping your business grow and expand. So offices can quickly be folded in, data can be quickly shared between departments, better reporting and forecasting will allow for faster month-end, quarter-end close processes and data sharing, all while incorporating multiple entities and multiple currencies. So consolidating systems will not only increase the accuracy of your company's financial data, but will allow you to scale the finance organization with the company's future expansion goals. So, integration of technology is a key driver for companies that are on the move, companies that want to grow, and it certainly shows in a lot of the survey results. The second area that I wanted to cover this morning was a key area in our survey was around reporting and analytics. And, companies today now have access to an exponential amount of volume and data, variety and velocity of data. But over the next 3 years, 85% of Fortune 500 organizations will fail to exploit this big data to achieve a competitive advantage. And if you look at the recent EMC Squared Digital Universe study, over the next 7 years, the world is planned to generate 50 times the amount of information that's even available today. There will soon be nearly as many bits of information in the digital universe as stars in the universe. And all the while, IT staff is planned to grow at less than 1.5 times. So we have data growing exponentially, although IT plans for businesses is not planned to grow. And that's a pretty significant gap. And therefore, the challenge for CFOs comes from isolating the important data and ensuring that you're tracking, the most important information when it comes to benchmarking and key performance indicators or KPIs. And many companies are currently facing an increased demand for KPIs. And really where the demand is coming from is that CFOs are being told that they need to supply predictive analytics, not just historical information. So let's turn to some of the key information here. We know data creation is increasing at a rapid pace. As a result, the strategic CFOs are seeking opportunities to streamline the whole decision-making process, elevate the importance of KPIs, and measure company performance in real time. And so the focus is really shifting from casual KPI monitoring that's based on historical data to predictive analytics and really dynamic metrics that will allow for rapid decision making. So what are CFOs saying about their key priorities around reporting and analytics? Let's take a look here. 47% of their analysis in the future will be based upon predictive data as opposed to basing on historical data. So when surveyed, CFOs say the majority of their analysis today is on historical data. So CFOs base 74% of their analysis on historical data, and there's a big desire to decrease the reliance on historical data and to increase the use of predictive data for reporting and analytics. These are interesting trends as CFOs look to impacting their organization in meaningful ways. They're concentrating on pulling data and providing analysis to help themselves and management make decisions based on what could happen, not what has happened in the past. But there's a challenge here, which is the sheer amount of data that I talked about earlier is really kind of throwing a lot of ambiguity into the process of what should be focused on and how do they cut through all the data to get to the best information. So if you look further into who's driving the demand for this, the executive team is by far the group putting the most pressure on CFOs today. 76% have increased their demand for KPIs from the CFO and the CFO organization, followed by other internal departments. 65% of them have increased demand. Some of the examples of the increase in demand for KPIs include the additional number of KPIs, just the sheer, there's new information that's out there every day, and so new KPIs are being created or key performance indicator. Companies have a desire for better and more accurate key performance indicators and an increased frequency, whereas maybe in the past a quarterly KPI could be good, now it's being requested monthly. If in the past there was a KPI that was on a monthly basis, companies now want it on a weekly basis, and the time frames keep getting shorter down to daily and hourly KPIs. And so there has to be greater accountability around the whole KPI and reporting process. So the increase in demand is driving the future for this data analysis. In order to meet these expectations, CFOs need to focus their efforts on what's really important to the company, the strategic goals of the company. So from benchmarking to an acute understanding of what factors really drive bottom line results, and prioritize which indicators are the true KPIs that will help the business go forward. Taking a look a little bit more on KPI effectiveness, as you'll see in this chart, CFOs really excel at what they kind of know best, financials. more than 75% of the respondents ranked their finance KPIs as excellent or good, and the other quarter of those ranked them as fair to poor. The next widely used KPI that they ranked highly was the sales. Sales KPIs came in second, saying that they were an effective KPI for the organization. Third was company objectives or strategic metrics. So common KPIs that we're seeing for businesses include the financial metrics, obviously gross and net profit, return on sales, debt to equity, other balance sheet metrics, cash flow. Around internal and manufacturing, obviously costs of goods, costs of labor, headcount, cost of sales, travel, revenue by product, revenue by source, revenue by geo. Customer service is a huge area for metric reporting, customer acquisition, customer turnover, returns, warranties, legal costs. And then last, really around all the employee relations, employee satisfaction, employee turnover, cost of employees around bonuses, etc. So while these KPIs work generally, there may be other KPIs that each individual business needs to consider. I think if you look on the manufacturing side, specifically, there are some key KPIs that are in play, around on-time delivery, the frequency in the percentage of the ability for the organization to meet committed delivery dates is a key metric. Time to market, the average time required to get new products to market from the time of concept to design to engineering is key. Yield by product line, by manufacturer, by facility are key metrics. So, you're talking about the percentage of good product versus scrap, partially important, when assessing the performance of, your outside process manufacturers or contract manufacturers. Certainly inventory turns is a significant metric here. How many times is inventory sold and replaced over a period of time. Equipment effectiveness is a big one. Average margin per sale per customer, and then customer complaints. So the average number of days to close a customer complaint, including any of that corrective action, preventative actions accompany the claim. So we're seeing a lot of manufacturers build, key KPI systems around these key industry metrics so that they can start moving from more of a historical reporting to a predictive model. Here's an example that I just wanted to share with everybody today. Varian Medical Systems, it's a medical manufacturing device organization. We worked with them. We deployed some key business intelligence software for them, but they really use the BI software to help them focus around their sales efforts and sales reporting. We used a lot of the data to identify potential device or software clients by the region, and then that helped inform a lot of the marketing campaigns. Sorting the results based on the size of the business, type of customers, and other customer categories. Broke the data into manageable sets and allowing customized self-service reporting for employees on contract performance, product maintenance, product usage, shipping, and order information. So here you can see an example where a large manufacturer used kind of BI to really, expand the knowledge that they had about their business. I guess one other example I would say before I move on here is a software company that is a leading third-party provider of enterprise software that we worked with. They needed to develop a data warehouse of all the data that was relevant to their business. We helped link not only the data warehouse together, but the data to put into a budgeting and planning software system to allow them to do a lot more predictive analytics. Helped them develop dashboards and enabled available mobile reporting for a lot of their employee expense tracking and planning, as well as weekly forecasting and real-time view of the data. So here's an example where they were more focused on how do they get all their data pulled into a warehouse so that they can pull it back out to look at it on a predictive basis And a lot of it was through mobility, was the end solution. And really that kind of leads me to the third area that I wanted to talk about this morning, which is what did our survey results say about what companies are doing in the area of mobile technology and mobile applications. And as you guys know out in the audience, smartphone and tablet ownership has grown significantly, but the 4G networks have expanded where high-speed data transfer is now available on a lot of the mobile devices where it's pretty efficient to use these. So and as data is expected to increase, we're going to be using more and more data on our mobile devices. Also, a big IT strategy that companies have is bring your own device to work, and enterprise mobility is another big trend. These aren't just passing trends. The market is expected to grow, over 15% annually around mobile devices and reach 181 billion by 2017. So when it comes to implementing, according to our survey, 50% of CFOs say their companies have already implemented or plan to implement a mobile reporting solution in the next 2 years. So maybe not so surprising that 50% say they're already planning. It's kind of surprising the other 50% aren't planning it. Of the companies who have implemented or are planning to implement mobile solutions, there were some key areas that stood out. Employee self-service was the #1 area that companies were looking to employ mobile capabilities. Sales automation was the second largest area, and then business metrics, as I just spoke about, and reporting and analytics was the third area. And then finally, ERP access, so getting information straight out of the ERP system was made the top 4. But we also surveyed CFOs on what are the barriers that are coming up during this process. So according to our survey, 25% of CFOs listed budget constraints as one of the greatest barriers to implementation. And so, I think CFOs have to be advocates for themselves, for their organizations, that they have to invest in some of these new areas that are not going to go away. They're going to be keys, and they're going to make their organization better. For CFOs that aren't currently implementing a mobile solution, you have an opportunity to enhance, the strategic leadership role by anticipating the barriers to mobility and figuring out how to overcome them. So while some CFOs say mobility isn't part of their overall strategy, a reassessment may suggest otherwise. There are now numerous mobile apps that integrate with ERP and financial data. With those applications come the benefit of reduced IT infrastructure, certainly maintenance costs, as well as increased productivity for workers that find themselves working outside the office, either traveling for business or working remote. So, I think mobility is a significant driver going forward. Oftentimes departments might not even know a mobile solution could benefit them. I think as a strategic leader of a CFO organization or a CFO needs to be thinking about how they can help all these other departments out. Too often departments operate in silos. I think, really exposing some of those mobile solutions out will show a lot of strategic leadership by the CFO and the CFO organization. So a lot of times when we're working with clients on whatever technology solution, mobile, it becomes kind of the wrapper around it, whether it's an ERP solution or a CRM solution or even business intelligence. Oftentimes the final deployment out to all the users is the mobility wrapper to the system. So it's something to consider as you guys are looking forward to new technology deployments, how to mobilize the technology that you're rolling out. So before I move off today, I just wanted to kind of close with 2 more things. One is reaffirm the CFO evolution. Our clients are constantly looking for ways to transform their organization and get to the next level. In particular, they're faced with the challenge of streamlining their core accounting functions, shifting their focus from accountant to business leader. And it's clear from our research that this is what CEOs and the boards of these companies are looking for from the CFOs to do that. So hopefully this information on some of the insights that we gained from our survey were interesting to you, and you can take away a few bits and pieces. And before I transition off this morning, I just wanted to close with a little bit about Armanino. As I mentioned, we're a CPA and consulting firm. We have offices across most of the major West Coast cities, as well as in the central region. We've been named one of the top 25 best of the best managed firms in the nation. From a consulting perspective, I mentioned our diversified services around Microsoft Dynamics, CFO advisory, and cloud solutions. Our consulting organization is dedicated to the CFO organization, making them better, bringing them key research and insights, while supporting a wide variety of industries here. So with that, I would like to now transition to Bob Monio from Lexmark to dig a little bit deeper into business process transformation, specifically around the Lexmark solution.
Okay, thank you very much, and really appreciate the comments and other things, Tom, and certainly Gil, for kicking off today's webinar. And representing Lexmark International, I'm responsible for our global alliances function inside the company, and as it applies to our work with Microsoft and certainly with our other partners, we're very proud to be here today. I'm also joined on the phone by Mark Pierce, as well as also Mark Uranza, a couple of individuals who are part of our extended team in helping us really deliver on the diverse needs that Dynamics organizations need and see as it applies to their accounts payable automation. And today what we're going to do is we're going to get down quickly to the brass tacks of the why, now, and how as it applies to the things that you've just heard from Tom, certainly as it applies to the CFO, but really peeling it back and looking at it from an organizational perspective and how with Microsoft Dynamics can you address that today. From the perspective of what we're going to be covering, there's going to be some key takeaways. And I think you've heard a lot about this in the last 20 minutes or so, specifically to what are the key principal drivers that are occurring inside organizations today across various types of industries. And being a $4+ billion company as we are at Lexmark and having a worldwide touch working across industries, we see this represented in each of the industries that Gil spoke of earlier today, and as it comes to manufacturing, very, very much so. And the key that we're going to focus on is going to be certainly that process standardization of accounts payable and how accounts payable can deliver some immediate value back to the business, and doing it in such a way that the standardization of processes as it applies across the organization can start here. And by leveraging the right types of technology that you have with Microsoft Dynamics and the cloud, you're able to see the benefit and value immediately. Now, as you look at the organization, certainly there are some key areas of manual accounts payable, as most organizations are faced with today, that they're suffering some significant problems from. And it really comes down to areas of inefficiency, their lack of visibility, and poor controls. You heard from Tom earlier that this is also reflective in other areas of the organization. It's the things that CFOs are complaining about, things that they need to see addressed. Certainly when it applies to AP, it's there in spades, and it's really where the root of the issues of manual accounts payable start to come up and are applied. And as you look at Microsoft Dynamics users, certainly we follow what analysts and others are checking and what they're validating with the Dynamics user community, which in itself is a very, very large community and continues to grow. And the feedback is there, that inefficient invoice management, the ability to not be able to get their early payment discounts and other things are certainly impacting the business. But ultimately, as you look at the areas of where the dilemma is most felt, it's the fact that these customers are seeing manual routing of invoices as being a very, very big problem for them. And then it's a large number of exceptions that are impacting the company and contributing to what is ultimately a high cost per invoice back to the firm. Now, if we take those areas that I spoke of just a minute ago as it applies to the business and areas of the business that need to be addressed, such as efficiency, visibility, vendor relations, and control, we now take this out to the organization as a whole within the context of the CFO, where the CFO is seeing these problems, these people are feeling these problems. And it's what's keeping them up at night, and it's what's not allowing them to go home at 5 o'clock every day when they need to be spending time with their families. It's the AP manager who's really wanting to see that elimination of the inefficiency in their invoice processing. It's the director of IT or the person who's responsible for the Dynamics environment who wants to see a more efficient environment being managed, and one that really fits the corporate goals of being able to do more with less. And certainly the corporate executive who is saying up at the CFO level, wow, how can I get more value from what I'm doing? How can I ensure that I'm being SOX compliant? And how can I also ensure that my business is going to be running and be running effectively? And this is where, as we look at now switching to what does automation mean, that we're then going to focus our time and focus those direct benefits for you so you understand the why and what that means. Because as we start to look at accounts payable automation and the benefits and what that means, it really does align itself to quicker approval of invoices across the organization. Those things we spoke of just a minute ago that are impacting the business, we see across our 12,000 customers worldwide that this type of automation and this type of return definitely attacks those key areas and generates the quicker approval, the more efficiency, and other things that customers want and what customers want to see. While at the same time, it's also introducing a much more improved management process so that from a management perspective, the upper level organizational managers are seeing more exposure into what they need to be able to manage and control. They can forecast and they can manage their cash more effectively and ultimately unlock those things that you heard Tom speak of earlier in the discussion. So as you look at each of the individuals then, and from the standpoint of their needs to specifically what and how it addresses their needs, the accounts payable automation system is all about then taking what is a concern around paper and paper coming into the business and the actual invoices coming into the business and introducing tools that help them capture this information much more efficiently, address self-service and supplier capabilities as well as approval workflow, and also provide capabilities in the area of productivity. I mentioned exceptions earlier as a key concern. The ability to address three-way matching and the ability to address line item coding and other things. These are areas of invoice processing that you have to be able to master if indeed you're also going to address the needs that are being experienced here. And as we go over to the IT professional, as I mentioned, their needs are all around doing more with less. Certainly the solution then has to be able to support in a very tight way the Dynamics environment and be able to work in a highly configurable way, leveraging not only mobile, but also leveraging cloud-based technologies to provide that cost-effective solution so that the organization can be agile, it can be nimble, and you can move very, very flexibly against the process needs that are coming forward and help that organizational IT component work in a way that's necessary to support the business. As you look then up to the CFO's needs, and as we now start to lift this up a little bit and address some of the things that Tom talked about, that pressure to maintain the margin, manage the cash, the ability to forecast, and also to really have strong supplier relations is something then also from an AP automation standpoint you have to be able to address those needs, and a good system does do that. It provides for a way of getting those early payment discounts. It provides for a way of providing reporting and audit control processing, as well as also supplier self-service to really bring your suppliers into your business and make them a part of your chain of working relations all the way from the supplier down to your customer. You know, doing this addresses the CFO's needs and makes this be very, very flexible. And if you do this, and if you address these areas as we just described, then you're able to deliver benchmarks that are not only better than the average, and as you can see here, we're demonstrating to you from what Aberdeen is telling us that the laggards have a very significant cost per invoice that they're processing. And CFOs know their cost per invoice. That's part of their job, is knowing what does it cost me to process my invoices in my business and how do I drive that down. You know, the average here from a company perspective at about $9.60 an invoice is still pretty high, as is the turn time for the days that invoices spend processing, and even from an early payment discount capture rate of 42.7%, the average is still fairly low. But with accounts payable automation, what you start to see and what we see across our customers globally is that these customers are able to then turn their invoices faster. They're able to capture much more of those early payment discounts back into the business and drive down that cost per invoice quite aggressively, down to the point of about $4 per invoice, which is very manageable. And if you take the number of invoices that a business is processing during the course of a calendar year and multiply this out, you begin to see the significant savings that comes to the business by moving into this area of automation. So what ultimately are you able to do then? You're able to take those core concerns, you're able to address them, and ultimately deliver about an 80% lower invoice processing cost back to the business, as well as a 75% shorter invoice processing time. Significant gains back to the business that have a definite impact on the bottom line and the management of cash and all of the factors that you heard Tom speak of earlier as we started today's discussion. So how do you get to this? In the area of Dynamics and Dynamics AX, what are those building blocks and what does the solution deliver? Certainly Lexmark, as a provider of these solutions and working with partners such as Armanino, can help you unlock these items for your business and deliver the solution that can be fine-tuned for you. In this context, it's about then bringing about the 6 building blocks, that incoming invoice, getting it into the business and being able to capture it and place it into Dynamics AX, creating the transaction inside of AX so that you're removing any opportunity for transcription error, miscoding, or other things to occur. The ability then to actually bring in the invoice image and store it along with the metadata so that you can refer back to it from a compliancy perspective and eliminate the need for any of the paper storage because you now have it digitally. Also, kicking off workflows for approvals, matching, exception handling, so that not only can PO invoices be processed, but also non-PO invoices can be processed appropriately, and you can deal with those exceptions quickly because it's the exceptions that drive up your cost per invoice. And finally, the approval and post for payment, getting the payment done, so ultimately the customer is being satisfied down the line, but upside-wise, up the line to your supplier. Suppliers are happy, you're able to capture those early payment discounts, and you're building a very strong end-to-end solution within your supply chain for purposes of managing incoming material all the way down to the point of customer replenishment. All of this being done with these simple building blocks that are delivered from the solution that we're bringing to the table. From the standpoint of customers, we talk about customers that are doing this today. Certainly a good example is ASSA ABLOY. ASSA ABLOY is one of the world's largest manufacturers of door and door frame and door lock assemblies in the world. They're also the world's largest user of Microsoft Dynamics AX. And using solutions such as this from Lexmark, they are today processing roughly 2 million invoices per year. They have a central point of invoice process control. When they put this system up, they did it in one of their centralized locations in less than a week. And it brings together the powers of Dynamics AX, the AP capabilities of the cloud, because it's delivered in a cloud-based solution running on top of Azure, and ultimately it's driven down their cost per invoice. The CFO for ASSA ABLOY reported when he went interviewed that it was costing him somewhere between 40 to 50 euros per invoice when they were processing across 3 separate centers, and in fact they couldn't even process any more invoices because they were so overloaded. When they moved to an automated environment such as this, they were able to cut that cost down to 1/10 of the original cost across their invoice load. Just do the computation and you can determine the cost savings back to the business. Very dramatic overall. And there are many more solutions like this and examples like this that we can speak to certainly with you, given we have over 12,000 customers and have been doing this for almost 20+ years. So then in closing, let's talk about what are the needs of the Dynamics organization, and in turn, what can you walk away with as far as what can the accounts payable solution in this fashion do for you? Well, first of all, it can deliver greater productivity. It does the things that are necessary to bring in the invoices appropriately, effectively, in a secure fashion and allow you to process them. It generates the real-time visibility that you need so that you are able to work specifically with your invoices appropriately and manage them across the business. It rides your architecture. It works in context of a scalable architecture that you have, and certainly takes advantage of the cloud, in this case Azure, and is able to leverage that cloud effectively to drive down other costs back into the business so that it continues to be effective. And certainly it meets the financial requirements necessary for the business and continues to reinforce that and becomes an effective, leverageable tool to your CFO and to the C-line of executives inside the organization, all coming from what can be delivered with Dynamics and Accounts Payable automation. So I did mention that from the standpoint of Lexmark, sometimes people will say, well, why Lexmark? Why should we be turning to you for this type of solution in the dynamic space? As you heard from Tom, you're receiving the benefits of an excellent high caliber organization in Armanino in assisting in this role. But certainly when we look at Lexmark, recognize that when it comes to the area of invoice processing, you're dealing with a thought leader and a solution provider that has been doing this for well plus 20 plus years. That today we are working with over 12,000 customers around the world. And if you look at the amount of invoice processing that we do, you're not going to find any other firm out there that is able to do this type of work in the volumes and in the levels that we do. So certainly from an experience standpoint, you can count on the fact that we can be your support. We can help you be very, very successful in achieving your AP goals and in turn addressing the things that Tom spoke of earlier, specific to the items that are facing your organization, the challenges that are there. With this solution, you can begin to move forward and address those in an effective fashion. So with that, I just want to say thank you on behalf of the Lexmark team that's here on the call, and I'm going to turn it back over to Gil and our moderator, and we'll look to take questions. Gil?
Yeah, fantastic. Great insight, great presentation. And just tabulating some of the questions that came in during the presentation. Actually, the first one's kind of easy. It's for the Lexmark team. We're a small company. What size company or number of transactions does it take for AP automation to give us a return on investment?
That's an excellent question, and certainly is one that we are being asked quite a bit today as we work with customers of all sizes about whether or not AP automation is a fit for their company. Some years back, certainly it was only the larger firms that would have been able to embrace AP automation. But it is with the adoption of the cloud and the tools that we're using as part of our solutions that today we can deliver this solution down to the smallest organizations that have somewhere between 2 and 99 employees inside their company, the traditional SMB market, as well as also the largest enterprises. And the reason why is because certainly the technology cost has been removed. The cloud is a great leveler, but also these firms have always wanted to address AP automation, and they've not been able to do it because they've not been able to take on those additional infrastructure costs and other things. They do suffer from the same types of problems that we pointed out when it comes to inefficiency of their process, high cost per invoice, their inability to capture early payment discounts and other things. So we're very, very confident that we can meet the needs of the SMB customer, and certainly to the questioner's question, the answer is yes, we can help them.
Okay, thank you. Here's a question, I guess, for Tom on the Armanino side. Tom, well, we're a business-to-business enterprise. Can you give me some examples of what you mean by predictive analytics?
Yeah, thanks, Gil. Yeah, in fact, predictive analytics is really anything that's going to help predict what is going to happen in the future. And I think a very common one is sales forecasting. When companies utilize data to predict what are going to be the sales volumes in the future, they can base purchasing off of that. They can base manufacturing off of that. But it's really looking at a lot of it is historical based, but coming up with models that will allow for predictive analysis around what's important to the business. So sales has certainly been one. A big area now with a lot of SaaS offerings in the market is the whole area of revenue. What is revenue going to be doing in terms of recognition in the future? So looking at the contractual requirements that a business has entered in with their customers, looking out over forward periods of what is the revenue, not only recognition, but what are we going to be able to recognize, what are we going to be looking at from a financial reporting and those types of things. So a lot of information is now being pulled together to predict what's going to happen in the future. Probably the third major area that we see companies really working on is around budgeting and planning, and this whole concept of rolling forecasts. So instead of doing the annual budget one time a year, setting that in stone, a lot of companies are moving to what's called rolling forecasts, and allowing technology and data to provide insights into what's going to happen next quarter, the quarter after, et cetera. And companies are basing a lot of their decision making off of these rolling forecasts than just looking at, say, an annual budget. So there's three kind of tangible examples, but there's many, many more out in the marketplace.
Okay, good, thank you. Here's another, I guess another question for Tom. Tom, in your CIO survey, the number 2 item was proper resource allocations. Can you explain what that means?
Well, yeah, I think there was a lot of things in our survey that we certainly didn't cover here, but really looking at optimizing in any kind of performance improvement project, we look at optimizing business process, technology, and people. And so oftentimes most companies really struggle with, they don't have enough people. They're resource constrained. How do they get more out of their people? So really looking at resource allocation from that perspective is always important, making sure that people are aligned correctly. Oftentimes companies have a lot of their most valuable people doing a lot of manual business processes. So how do we elevate what those folks are doing? But the other aspect that I didn't cover in the survey that was one of our major themes, we had 7 major themes, was around project management, and this whole notion that companies struggle with managing projects to completion, managing the return on investment that they anticipated at the beginning of the project, and analyzing kind of that from a how to become better at doing internal projects and managing those to greater success. And a lot of that had to do with resource allocation as well. So hopefully that answered the question around resource allocation, but it's oftentimes around the people and the skill sets and putting them in the best place to help the organization with the highest initiatives.
Okay, thank you, sir. I guess here's another question for the Lexmark team. We don't have an ERP system today. Is it still possible to do AP automations without ERP?
That's a good question, and certainly one that we do see some situations where customers do not have ERP systems, but rather have small accounting software that they might be using. They may be taking advantage of just using as simple as spreadsheets and such. And smaller SMB organizations, still some of them are working that way. The good news is, yes, you do suffer from some of the same types of issues, and the way our solutions have been crafted, they're intended to be able to address some of those needs and can work with the type of organization such as the one that perhaps is asking the question, and through the use of the cloud can still yet deliver those cost benefits and those cost types of savings. It's one certainly we would want to talk to them about and better understand what they would like to do, but we do have good examples of that.
Fantastic. And I guess this is a perfect segue question. How can I get more information? I love that one. So maybe we could pop it over to the last slide that has all the contact information and just throw that up, Dee.
Great, thank you very much, Gil. So that wraps up our Q&A. If you guys have any more specific questions, please feel free to contact our presenters directly. Their information is up right now, and as I mentioned, we'll be sending out a link to this recording and slide deck within 48 hours. So thank you so much. As you exit, you'll notice that there's a quick survey. If you could just take a moment and let us know how we're doing. Thanks again for joining us, and have a great day.